Hello, I'm Orkhan Amashov. Welcome to Headlines. Although the fall of Bashar al-Assad, former Syrian leader, is almost unanimously interpreted as a significant blow to Moscow's reputation and influence in the region, the imminence of the termination of a treaty related to a leased military installation of the Russian naval facility in Tartus was not a matter of absolute certainty for everybody. It has recently been reported that the new Syrian government has already terminated a treaty granting Russia a long-term military presence in the Mediterranean. It's worth remembering that back in 2017, an agreement was signed between Russia and Syria to extend the Russian Navy's lease on the port of Tartus for 49 years. And now it seems that authorities in Tartus annulled the agreement, demanding the immediate withdrawal of Russian forces. My guests today are Hamdi Rifai, Government Relations Executive Director of MOS Strategies and Foreign Affairs Analyst, and Yossi Kapavasa from Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much indeed. My first question is going to be addressed to Mr. Rifai. What is your reaction to the news on the unilateral termination of this lease? And could you walk us through the circumstances involving this particular military base? Because if memory serves me correctly, I could be wrong, of course. When I spoke to you last time, you said that this base is so important from Russia's perspective that Russia could even agree to send Bashar al-Assad back to Damascus in order to retain that military base. Could you please reflect on this?
It was always unclear what position the new president of Syria would take because it's a risky proposition to have terminated the lease with Russia over the military base. From 2011, it was always clear that Russia had an eye on that military base, on Tartus, and wanted to have a footprint in the Middle East, particularly a warm water footprint in the Mediterranean, and Tartus provided that. So it demonstrates a boldness of the new president and a willingness to do what is in the interests of Syria and not be controlled by the fear of Russia, which means that Russia's influence is essentially disappeared in Syria, and importantly, it's substantially reduced throughout the Middle East. Typically, what we've seen is that when Syria was concerned about the West, it went to Russia. Russia was the counter to the West. Now, we have essentially burned that bridge. And Ahmad al-Shara has demonstrated a willingness to be part of the, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it, the civilized world, the world where people aren't killed by the millions.
Thank you, Mr. Rifai. Mr. Kapavasa, what is your view on this latest development? It has also been said that new Syrian government, the current administration in Damascus, is going to impose or has already imposed bans on imports from Russia, Iran and Israel as well. So what trajectory will the new government, do you think, will chart?
Well, I think that they have an account to settle. The Russians were supporting Assad, President Bashar al-Assad and his father Hafez al-Assad for many years, including during the civil war that erupted in 2011. And for 13 years, they were fighting for, definitely since 2015, they were fighting for Assad and killing the Syrians that were fighting against him. So it was expected that now that they are in power, they will take steps against the Russians. And it goes along with the attitude of the new government to gain some credibility with the West and with the moderate elements in the Arab world. So this is what we are witnessing. And of course, it's a very important setback for the Russians because their attempt to continue to be regarded as a global superpower is going to be severely harmed by this move by the Syrians. The interesting thing is to what extent this new policy of Ahmad al-Shara reflects a real new attitude and not just some sort of a temporary move in order to create better conditions for building relations with people that can help him stabilize the situation in Syria.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr. Rifai, it seems to be very clear that there is no comparable alternative base for the Russian Navy in the region, as long as Russia's interests are concerned. I recently, I think I've glanced at the sort of a publicly available military intelligence report produced by the UK government, saying that in terms of its ability, this base was absolutely critical to Russia in terms of supporting it militarily, and also its private military contractors in Africa, as well as sort of limiting this reputational cost after the fall of the previous government. I mean, is the Russian decline in Syria, apart from being crystal clear, is also inevitable and somewhat irreversible in the short term? Because we also heard from Vladimir Putin, Russian president, saying that those people who believe that the fall of Bashar al-Assad should be unanimously regarded as a decline of Russian influence in the region, those people are deeply mistaken. That's what Putin said. What would you say to this?
I would say they're probably right. The fact of the matter is that Russia, while it is experiencing a decline in the Middle East, it has not given up on the Middle East. And we can see that because it moved its military assets from Syria to Libya. And we can see that they've now entered into a military cooperation agreement with Iran. So now they're going to play a very different role in Syria, I think. They've embraced Iran. They're going to try to continue to build that relationship and hope for a base in Iran. They're going to continue to try to double down on Libya. And so I think we're going to continue to see a very difficult Russia that isn't going to accept its fate easily. But I think with regard to Syria, the Levant, the Gulf, its seal is decided. Its fate is decided. And it's not going to be embraced by Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, or anyone. It's important to note, though, that the UAE, while it is often talked about as a Western ally, it's also Russia's ally. So we see that the UAE is a partner to Russia in many of the conflicts throughout the world. Often the UAE falls on the wrong side. That's a foreign policy that goes back and forth and shifts. When we saw the fall of the Assad regime, the UAE had to do a double take. It saw its complete policy collapse in a matter of days. So the question is, will UAE remain as somewhat of a partner to Russia? Will that be its way back into the Middle East? I don't think we know yet. I think the changes are so drastic and so extreme, and such a change from what we've been seeing for at least the past 50 years, that really it's too early to predict what the outcome is going to be. But we can say for certain that for the moment, Russia is on the decline, and not only on the decline in the Middle East, but on the decline in Africa and elsewhere.
Yeah, and also some experts are saying that UAE is more important to Russia than Iran. And rather intriguingly, Russia and Iran recently, to be more precise, on the 27th of January, signed Strategic Comprehensive Agreement, which includes, inter alia, specific provision on working together to, and I quote, maintain peace and security in different regions of the world, including the Middle East, in order to prevent third-party interference and destabilizing activities of other actors. Given that Russia and Iran lost ground in Syria, in what ways you believe that they could jointly take actions to regain that lost ground? This question is addressed to Mr. Cooper. Bassem.
Well, I think that they can help each other in many ways. It's, first and foremost, militarily, and the Iranians keep helping the Russians in their war in Ukraine with drones and technology for missiles and maybe even missiles production for the Russians. So it's one way, and the other way, Russia can provide Iran with nuclear technology that is necessary for its last moves towards having the capability to produce nuclear weapons. And we saw that the Russians are helping the Iranians in building a bigger nuclear power plant in Bushehr. And there are many ways in which they can help each other. We should be worried about this cooperation, because anybody who cooperates with Iran, with this radical and very extreme regime, is not helping establishing security and stability in the Middle East, but rather the opposite. And that's a major source of concern for us in Israel. We have managed to somehow limit the scope of this cooperation in many years of working with President Putin. Let's see if this new agreement signify a new stage in their cooperation or just more bravado for political purposes.
Yeah, it's important to note that Israel recently cooperated to transfer weapons obtained from Russia in Syria to Ukraine.
No, this is not true.
Which signals a shift. Which signals,
Sorry, this is not true. This was a misunderstanding of something that happened in Israel. This isn't true.
Well, I certainly haven't seen any statements denouncing it or declining to. I mean, often the Israeli government says things or denies things. You can certainly say it's not true. I don't know. It's been reported in the media. However, if it is true, it's important to note that this is a very big reversal from Israel's positions in the past, where it did not undertake such efforts. And in fact, like you had said earlier, actually had cooperated with Russia, particularly in the Middle East, in deconfliction and other areas.
I can just brief you about what happened was that our Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, who just joined the government, had a proposal before she joined the government when she was in the opposition to deliver to Ukraine weapons that were confiscated in Lebanon from Hezbollah. But when she joined the government, she dropped this proposal, and this proposal is not going to pass.
I mean, it certainly sounds like when Israel denies having nuclear weapons. I mean, is it true or is it not true? I appreciate that you're giving me more details about one of the statements about it. I don't know if it's true or not true, but thank you.
Well, I think, thank you very much indeed for this very interesting exchange. So, Mr. Rifai, some Israeli sources are suggesting that, and I quote, they say that a Syria ruled by Sunni Islamists who do not recognize Israel's right to exist could potentially pose a bigger threat to the country than Iran, which is Israel's arch enemy. Adding to this that Ankara could use, and again I quote, the new Syrian government as a proxy force to restore the Ottoman crown to its former glory. And that's the quote from some of the Israeli sources. I mean, to what extent this language is adequate to the reality or the reality of the circumstances on the ground? And how do you evaluate or see this Turkish-Israeli interaction as far as Syria is concerned?
So again, I think you've already summed up what the reality is there. These are statements from Israel. Israel that has already violated Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity by exceeding the limits of the deconfliction zone between Israel and Syria. So of course it's going to make statements like that because it has to justify its actions, a pretext for the violation of Syria's territorial integrity. The Syrian government has been very clear. One of Ahmed al-Shaba's first statements was, "We seek no problem with Israel, and we have no intentions of attacking Israel." It couldn't be any clearer. The bogeyman of the Sunnis is something that has been perpetuated for far too long by Obama, Biden, Brett McGurk types that have done that to justify their failures in Iraq that was picked up by Israel. But Sunnis are really, I think, particularly Syrian Sunnis, are moderate in most cases. The only one that ever attacked Israel was Assad, who also had agreements with Israel. So this claim that Sunnis are somehow more likely to be a threat to Israel when Israel has demonstrated itself to be a threat to Syria is really quite the hypocrisy. And this claim that Turkey is somehow seeking to become the Ottoman Empire again, this is again an old trope written up by think tank analysts in Washington to justify the constant belligerence and attacks against Turkey. Turkey has demonstrated itself to be very, very careful in its foreign affairs, in its military affairs, and a stabilizing factor throughout the Middle East and elsewhere, as we saw in Azerbaijan, Libya, Sudan, Syria, and elsewhere. You know, these claims really, there are no facts to back them up.
Mr. Kababas, what are the prospects of Turkish-Israeli cooperation in Syria in terms of helping Syria sort of re-emerge as a unified sort of nation with all the necessary attributes of a state? We recall that when Israel increased the scope of its aerial campaign to destroy the remnants of military facilities previously employed by Assad, Turkey sort of relayed a message to Israel saying that such attacks must stop, simultaneously acknowledging Israeli concerns that arms such as chemical weapons could potentially fall into the wrong hands. So, but also I think we acknowledge that Israel has avoided striking some of the HTS targets. So bearing in mind that there is a degree of understanding between these two countries and that are both very important actors in the Middle East, how do you evaluate the prospects of cooperation between them amidst this inflammatory rhetoric which quite often employed by both sides?
Well, I think that, yes, there is an inflammatory rhetoric, but basically there are some common interests between Israel and Turkey when it comes to Syria. First of all, we both want to make sure that Iran is not meddling in the Syrian affairs anymore. Secondly, we want to make sure that Iran doesn't use Syrian territory in order to deliver arms for Hezbollah in Lebanon. And thirdly, we want to make sure that Syrian territory is not used by terror groups against our security and our people. And I think it's also an interest of Turkey, because if we have to retaliate and take more severe security steps to prevent that from happening, it's not going to be in Turkey's interest. So all in all, I think we can cooperate. There are some issues that have to be dealt with, which is the rights of the minorities in Syria. There is the issue of the Kurdish minority in Syria and how its rights are going to be preserved. But I think we can overcome these issues. And
Professor, there's no issue of Kurdish minorities in Syria. There was an issue of Kurdish rights, minority rights in Syria under Assad.
Yeah.
This is a new government. There are no facts to support a claim that Kurds are discriminated against under this new government. The new government is a month old, and there are no facts to support that Syrians discriminate against the Kurds. These are tropes, again, provided by Israel and others to justify certain actions. In this case, Israel has used that claim to justify supporting the SDF, YPG, PKK terrorists. We know that France and others, and now Iran, also support the SDF, YPG, PKK, as does the US. The fact is, no Syrian is discriminated against them other than the regime that Syrians removed.
Oh, it's too early to say.
That's a fact, Professor. That's a fact.
No, I'm just saying that it's too early to know if they're going to be discriminated.
No, it's not too early to know. It's something that you're creating. How can you say that you don't know it if there are no facts to ever support that it occurred?
Well, the situation in Syria is now in an embryonic stage that what's going to be the national pact, national charter.
But you've already found yourself with concerns, even though there are no facts to support those concerns.
While this is being worked out, there is room for concerns. We hope that these concerns will be...
Well, we have our own concerns with regard to Israel's with regard to Israel's violation of Syria's territorial integrity.
No problem.
That seems to be a bigger threat where Syrians were actually killed. Why is Israel attacking Sunnis?
Mr. Rifai, everybody has a good reason to be concerned, and it's
No,
fine.
not everybody has a good reason to be concerned. You've told everybody to have a good reason to be concerned. Syrians don't have that concern because Syrians understand that Syria is a mosaic made up of many ethnicities and religions, and those ethnicities and religious people have lived side by side without fear, without fighting, until Assad came along that Israel supported.
No, we didn't support Assad.
Yes, Professor. That's in fact what happened. You had agreements with Assad, and that's how Assad remained.
We
Israel
didn't have any
preferred
agreement. The
Assad,
forces that
just
kept
as
Assad
the
in
U.S.
power,
did.
sir, the forces that kept Assad in power were the Iranians and the Russians, not us. It's as you mentioned, Assad.
And now
attacked us.
Israel is with the Iranians and the Russians supporting the
No, we
SDF,
are not with
YPG, PKK,
We are
Marxists.
not.
Because
We are not.
those are the concerns that you
These
raised,
are
Professor.
tropes, sir. I'm sorry. These are tropes that are really unjustified. We are not with the Iranians. We never
No, they're
are.
not tropes. You just said it yourself. You said there were concerns about the Kurds and their rights. You said it. They're
Yes.
not tropes. I am
Concerns.
repeating your words, Professor.
We are not cooperating with the Iranians and now there was the Russians in Syria. We actually extended a hand for peace
You're
with
backing the
the new
same
government.
parties, sir. Denying it doesn't mean that you're not cooperating with them. In fact, you are. You are putting out rhetoric daily about the Kurds and the minorities, and you've done so in this program.
Yes, we are concerned, as I said.
Yes,
but we are
that's
not,
correct. Thank you for admitting that.
We are concerned, and there are reasons why we are
Yes,
concerned.
it's not a
Because we
trope.
speak-
It's propaganda being said by people in Israel, analysts like yourself, the government, creating concerns. Just
No, we are
as
not
concerns were
creating
created about Armenians in Karabakh, just as concerns were made again and again about ethnic cleansing that was false.
No,
We
are
all
not-
understand these
we are not
concerns,
creating
Professor.
concerns because the fact on the ground is that they are being attacked, and by forces that are loyal to the Turks, and this is the facts on the ground. So we have room for concern here. And
Sir, Syrians of the
just
Syrian
like you,
National Army are not loyal to the Turks. They were trained by the United States. They received support from Turkey, just as before that they had received training from the United States.
Right, but now they get
Before
support
Turkey
from
adopted
Turkey.
them, they
Now they
were
get
part
support
of the
from Turkey,
train and
and they get
equip
the missions
program
from
of the
Turkey.
United States of America.
No. That's they would. They
No,
had.
yes, that's true. That's just a fact. They were part of the DoD program under General Austin. He failed to train them adequately.
I agree
Brett
that there
McGurk
was a time that
then
they were
adopted the
prepared.
SDF and created that.
No. Let's put the record
Why do you
straight.
keep saying no, denying facts?
I'm not denying your facts. But
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I'm terribly sorry. I'm terribly sorry. Just, it looks like that the time of our program is about to end. With your permission, I would like to end this conversation. And thank you very much indeed for your time and for your detailed argumentation. I'm grateful to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm grateful to both of you for presenting your case in a very persuasive way. This for Hamdi Rifai, Government Relations Executive Director for MOS Strategies and Foreign Affairs Analyst, and Yossi Kupabasa from Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. See you very soon.